Hello, everybody. So, this is our 24th book club discussion. We should have had it before and finished it at the at the end of last year itself. But I guess we know now stretched it nearly now to the mid of January. But this is bound to be a nice, interesting discussion. So, let's begin. We are doing the great Indian novel by Shashi Tharoor today. So let's begin by seeing a little bit about the author and then about the book and the praise and appreciation which it's received, and of course the satirical aspects, and then about the characters, the very interesting characters, the politics, some discussions and quotes. Um, So Shashi Tharoor definitely needs no introduction. He's a third term Lok Sabha MP representing the Thiruvananthapuram constituency. He's a chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology. He's previously served as Minister of State for Human Resource Development and the Minister of State for External Affairs in the Government of India. During his nearly 3-decade-long prior career at the United Nations, he served as a peacekeeper, refugee worker, and administrator at the highest levels, serving as Under Secretary General during Kofi Annan's leadership of the organization. He culminated his studies in 1978 with a doctorate in international relations and affairs from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University. At the age of 22, he was the youngest person at the time to receive such an honor from the Fletcher School. Till 2013, he was India's most followed politician on Twitter until being overtaken that year by the current Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. He was the first Indian, in fact, to reach 10,000 followers and then 100,000 followers on Twitter. And currently, he has about 4.2 million. It's increased by now. He's always been a non-loyalist of the Gandhis, despite being an integral part of the Congress. And Tharoor was recently lopsidedly defeated by Mallikarjun Kharge, who was the first person outside the Nehru-Gandhi family to become the party president. So in his literary career, he has been an award-winning author of both fiction and non-fiction. His first novel was The Great Indian Novel. As of 2021, he's written 23 books in English. His first published story, which appeared in the Sunday edition of the Free Press Journal in Mumbai, his first published story appeared in the Sunday edition of the Free Press Journal in Mumbai at the age of 10. And he has stories dating back to when he was 6 years of age. So he says that he started writing when he was 6. And Dr. Tharoor's books have been translated into French, German, Italian, Polish, Romanian, Russian, Spanish, as well as Bengali, Malayalam, and Marathi. So the Great Indian Novel was published in 1989 by the Viking Press, and it has had 43 reprints as of October 2014, and a Silver Jubilee special edition was also issued on the book's 25th anniversary in October 2014 by the Viking Penguin India. So in 2020, the Independent's Emma Lee Potter listed the Great Indian Novel as one of the 12 best Indian novels. It's a required reading in several courses on post-colonial literature. It won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for the best book from South Asia and Europe in 1990. It's interesting to see many negative reviews for the book too, which is easy to find on Goodreads. You should definitely check them out. Some of them are hilarious. So now starting with the book, the narrator in this novel is based on V.V. Giri, who was the president of India in 1977. He's also a writer, orator, politician, labor activist, freedom fighter, and governor, and he has been governor for several states. In the Great Indian Novel, Ved Vyas, the narrator, is 88 years old, and he's modeled on V.V. Giri. V.V. dictates his narration to Ganapati, a young South Indian scribe who has been, sent by Ved Vyas's friend Brahma to transcribe for him. And of course, Ganpati is based on Lord Ganesh, the Hindu god who originally wrote down Vyasa's account of the Mahabharata. Just to ask you all a general question, did you read someone else as the narrator of, as the book? Like, did you read it as Ved Vyas is based on V.V. Giri, or did you get any other, person was mentioned? In case you did any research on.
Small tidbit to as far as V.V. Giri is concerned,
Mm-hmm.
our ex-president, he belongs to our place, Berhampur, Odisha.
Oh, very nice. Okay.
And there is a road named after him,
Okay.
Giri Road, like that.
Oh, wow.
And he, yes, from Berhampur, Odisha, he hails. That is what I want. When I heard V.V. Giri, I thought of sharing that information.
Okay. What I
And
meant
as
was,
far as your question,
what I meant was in, I read in other one or two places where it says the Ved Vyas, the narrator of the novel, is not based on V.V. Giri, as based on Rajaji, which is what I
could
asked.
be, could be.
So is
But
it
I
V.V.
took it
Giri
as
or
a
is it
very,
Rajaji? I'm not sure exactly whom he means.
see, Chakravarti Rajagopalachari, he wrote Mahabharata, and it is a brilliant book.
Ah,
Along with Paul Scott and others, actually.
correct,
And Tharoor, for that matter, has depended on these two books, apart from several other books also. He has quoted them.
correct.
I
So
took
in,
it is Rajagopalachari because somewhere he was referring to his spectacles, goggles, or what you call, if I recollect correctly. Could be
could
Rajagopal.
be
Anyway,
Rajaji also. So some places
Raja.
I read it as Rajaji, and in some places I read it as V.V. Giri. So,
V.V. Giri never came to my mind. I would have been excited very much since he belongs to
oh,
our
okay.
place. It was
Oh,
Raja only that got stuck up in my mind for that matter.
okay, okay, okay. Yeah. Okay, so proceeding then so the time period is story of Mahabharata is now recast and reset in the context of the Indian independence movement here. So the story starts right from in the pre-independence period till and it follows for the first 3 decades of the post-independence. It shows the Indian history, how the Indian history is transformed through the characters from mythology. So the mythical story of India is retold as a history of Indian independence and subsequent history through the 1980s. So, okay, let's go back. So the format and structure is Mahabharata can be basically translated in English as the Great India. So Tharoor adopts this name for the text under discussion and names it as the Great Indian Novel. So the phrase is also an allusion to the long-standing idea of the Great American Novel. So the author expertly blends both the mythical story of Mahabharata and its peripheral ligands with the Indian political history up to the 80s. By by telling the 1 second, where it's noisy, just a minute. Okay, right. Yeah. So the Mahabharata is divided into 18 parvas, and each of those parvas, each of those parts describes a particular important event in the epic. Similarly, Tharoor has also divided his text into 18 parts, and he names them after an important event in the novel. Um, the Great Indian Novel is a satire. It's a political satire. A satire is generally something usually meant to be funny, but of course, the purpose of satire is not primarily humor. It's also an attack on something which the author strongly disapproves, using the weapon of wit. So Tharoor uses it as an important and accelerating way of dealing with the human experience of the past and the present to show the glory and folly of India and the Indian society. So to go more into specifics, the Great Indian Novel is called as a Menippean satire. So a Menippean satire is basically has both components of prose and verse. And in this kind of a satire, usually the attack is on contemporary institutions, conventions, and ideas. And they are criticized in a very mocking style. So Tharoor has used Menippean satire to bring effective narration and to justify the main source of inspiration. So because of course Mahabharata is also an epic poem, so he also wanted to incorporate verse and prose into his style of writing. So the main mode of narration is a parody. It's contextualized Mahabharata with the present political condition. So it incorporates remote history with the recent history. Um, as I said, it's an epic poem, and he has incorporated both verse and prose forms for an effective narration. So he pokes fun at contemporary socio-political scenario of India, where caste and class still hold their ground, and caste-based and class-based politics still rules the roost, all the more even now. So he also, ridicules the woe of celibacy by Ganga. He ridicules the adulterous customs of the Vedic ages. And he parodies the situation in which the Guru Drona forces Ekalavya to cut his thumb. But uh, how the student now refuses to do such dumb things. And he also, Ekalavya here also symbolizes the contemporary youth whose relationship with the teachers is right now it's just like a business deal. He uses a completely irreverent tone towards historical figures and important historical events too. Um, so this was you know, an interesting diagram which I found online, which again here, if you see Ved Vyas is shown as Raja Gopalachari, that's Rajaji. Um, and others, I guess by now you must have found them out. But still, I thought a few of the characters I'll just share with you in case if you had maybe not guessed. So Kanika, the minister of Hastinapura, who's shown as very close to, close to the ruler, the prime minister, but who finally, is made the scapegoat in the China war. Represents in actual life Krishna Menon, the defense minister during the China war, who was very close to Nehruji. And in fact, Krishna Menon was known as the second most powerful person in India after Jawaharlal Nehru during those years. Lady Georgina Drupat was Edwina Mountbatten, the wife of Lord Mountbatten. And Jay Prakash Drona is based on Jay Prakash Narayan, who was a former freedom fighter who, in fact, opposed Indira Gandhi's rule. And he's the one who was the leader of Janata Party, which defeated Congress in the 77 elections. And so Draupadi here, represents democracy, which is why sometimes, she's written as democracy. So Mokrasi here actually means democracy. So democracy, that was his play on words. And Gandhari the Grim is based on Kamala Nehru, the wife of Jawaharlal Nehru. Shishupal, who is Dhritarashtra's short-lived successor in the story, is based on Lal Bahadur Shastri, who was the second Prime Minister of India. And Yudhishthir is based on Morarji Desai, who was a very honest but a very ineffective fourth Prime Minister of India. Again, Yudhishthira also there's another view that he represents Indian judiciary. Bhim represents the Indian army. Arjun represents the Indian news media, and Nakul and Sahadev are representative of the civil service and the foreign service. Then apart from this, D. Krishna Menon, whom we see as this, a very patriotic person from Kerala who's very involved in his local politics, is actually based on A.K. Gopalan, who was the communist leader. He was the first opposition leader to central government, and he started the Communist Party of India. Okay, so this was another very interesting chart which I found online, which is the places which are there in the book and what do they actually mean. So Gelabin is basically Bengal. So he says Bengal, being girl. So girl bean. So I don't even know, all the thought process that he has put into naming the places. So Kashmir. So cash means money. So that's why he says money mir when he changed the name. And then Goa is like Goa. So he has changed it into Kam-a. And China is, is normally known as Chinese are normally sometimes called as Chini, and and all that. So Chini means sugar. So that's also called as chakkar. So that's why he's called China as chakra. And Peking. So Peking can be, it's a play on words again. Peak ing. So he peak. Another word for peak could be snoop. So peaking has become snooping. And so this was very interesting to read, in all the thought process that has gone into naming the various places. And I'm very sure you must have found out the Hastinapur massacre actually means the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and Laslat was Lahore, Tibia was Tibet, and yeah. Um, I think before we go to the discussion topics, let me probably stop share, and if there's something I missed, you could share with me too. Um, so how many of these connections could you make, Tulika, Suchi?
Yeah, we could make most of it. And there is actually a page on Wikipedia also.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my all-time favorite is Lahore and Laslat.
Yeah,
I was just
and
amazed
like,
how
how did
he.
he even think of it?
Yeah, exactly. That is the thing. Yeah, that is. And of course, this tibia is Tibet, and then drowning is what that is. I couldn't get that one. I don't know. They were having a road connection, some
Yeah.
drowning or something. I didn't. I couldn't make out that. That is.
uh,
Yeah,
so,
I think
what about you,
a lot
Percy?
of the place names were actually a bit difficult to relate, but
Yeah.
the historical figures it was very interesting to try and figure out, because you kept, oh, this must be this one, this must be this one. I didn't think of doing the Wikipedia lookup, but I think I was able to get some of them right. But yeah, it's a very clever way he has gone about it.
Correct. And like some of them, I just thought, it doesn't really mean someone in history. But then later when I picked it up, I'm like, okay, so this definitely means this person. So I couldn't guess everything also. So it was based on the research only. um,
Some of them are very obvious, like Gandhiji as Ganga
correct.
and Jinnah,
Yeah.
all that, because he was giving those physical description also, no?
Correct.
In the book about Subhash Bose and all that. So they were all easy.
Yeah, they were easy. Correct.
That is the thing. Because
Yeah.
he was always describing the physical form also. So naturally, you can correlate.
True.
As a matter of fact, more than the places, persons we could easily connect. Places
Exactly.
I found a little difficulty because when he spoke of a person or a character, he has been able to describe the characteristics of that person. So you can immediately connect.
Yeah. Right.
That is how it happened. But places, thank you. I could. But even though I tried my best, democracy, I could. Draupadi is symbolic of democracy. I could not after halfway through because it was so typically named. It is not easily. He doesn't give it away. That Draupadi represents democracy. But there is a particular paragraph I was simply carried away. Somewhere it is 441 or 442 pages when it describes the Draupadis. If you look at it as a Draupadi and description, it is something else. But since you understood, actually, it means not a person, but a political entity in this present world, that is democracy. It sounds still more beautiful.
Correct.
I liked that paragraph actually, because to connect a person and then connect a philosophy, political philosophy, and then describe it is something. It's not that easy.
Correct.
That is how I liked that.
Yeah.
And the other one, just you brought it, that Peppian, what is that? Menippean satire. I was not aware of this. I have learned this. That means unless and until you know different satire, different types of satire, and then group it somewhere here under Menippean, I do not know. That is, thank you. That Menippean satire I learned.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
all
it's
said
something
and
even I
done, the
learned.
book is a huge book, is a mammoth book.
True.
It is more than 600 pages.
Correct.
Particularly when I got it and took it for reading, I was just nervous. This is how can I complete this? I was apprehensive. But your extension was a bonus. It helped me. You have shifted the date from 6 to 30th, madam. That helped me as a matter of fact. I was the straight beneficiary of that. Because
I
3-4 days
started
back.
reading only after January was born, so I'm equally bad.
I just actually completed 3-4 days back.
Oh.
Full book. Because some paragraphs I thought of going back, what actually means, why these names are like. For instance, if you take Karna, that is Muslim, if you are really into this mythology and then connect it with these characters, it's not that easy.
Correct.
But if you take it seriously, Karna is a gem of a person. He has got a lot of qualities, very positive quality, that is a separate thing. And then Duryodhan is a male, and here he says Duryodhani, Priya Duryodhani. Like, to connect, I took some time actually. He changes the places, he changes the gender of the characters, and then he connects them in his own personal subjective way. Because you have to get into the author's mind, otherwise you cannot get it with your understanding of epic or the freedom movement for that. But that's what I felt a little difficulty initially. And added to it, Shashi Tharoor is what you call a very formidable grip on knowledge, lexicon and other things. You can't take him easily.
Correct.
When I opened the book, I also appearance in the sense, can I read him? Because he is known for his words. He has written books on words actually. His language is definitely different than several our Indian writers who have wrote so far.
Yeah.
Take in the case of Raja Rao or Mulkraj Anand, R.K. Narayan, they come nowhere near the language command our Tharoor has got. So I was apprehensive whether I will be able to complete. Size is big, and the man who has written is also known for his uses of language in a typical difficult way. And
But
we had him.
this was very much readable, Shamal Raoji.
I accept it. But
Yeah.
once I got into the book, I will go 100% with your idea that it is, once you get into it, it is readable.
Correct.
But with the background which we have, little difficult. But once you get into the book, it's okay. It's like any other normal book.
Correct.
And few words here, few words there. And there are 3 words I come across. I didn't get them in dictionary also. I don't know. Many of you come to it. I searched for the meaning of that word. I didn't get it. Maybe somewhere he has his own coining and like ENEMA. I don't know. I could not get it. ENEMA. It is on page 146.
Oh, can you type it out on the chat?
Enema.
Enema.
Yeah.
What does it? And then derisory.
That's a word.
Maybe derisory. DERISORY. And then another word, inegalities. INEGALITAES. 2 words are on page 146, and the last word, that is inequality, is on 596 page. There was little difficult to get him. Maybe we just skipped it. And the subject is also difficult if you take it seriously, madam, in the sense. You are well aware of, for instance, being an Indian or Hindu for that matter, you are aware of this great epic, either Ramayana or Mahabharata. From childhood, you know it.
Correct.
And then parallel, if you happen to a little longer, you know our independent movement, and then how emergency and rest of things also.
Correct.
To juxtapose those 2 things and then bring out a novel is not at least that easy for one who is not well knowledgeable about the epics and this Indian political what I call changes. That is the case of a Westerner. I'm sure actually he'll be finding it difficult to connect both the things.
Correct.
And I had in one of the interviews, he was asked also. You see, for us, we are very much acquainted with the epic and other things. What about one who is not a non-Indian for that matter? He said, in one of his questions, they asked him, then he explained the position. What happened was, after having read the book, they started reading Mahabharata and contemporary Indian history. It triggered their interest in them. That is how he said.
And the cast of characters also seemed, true with history too, but at the same time, they didn't divert so much from the mythology also. So,
no.
Yeah, quite amazing.
It is in that broad frame those characters function.
Correct.
They didn't, he didn't digress actually from original mythology. Had he done it in the present days, things would have been much difficult for him.
Correct.
Even Kushwant Singh somewhere he said actually this book will get banned. He remarked actually.
Correct. So
Ah,
I have
he
something about that in the next slide, in fact.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, please go ahead. Then
Exactly.
we
I'll
think
start with that.
it appears we think parallelly in that.
The same thing what you said. Why? So there was an interesting thing in India today on why it didn't get banned.
Okay,
And how
that I have
cleverly
not.
Penguin made sure it didn't get banned or something like that, So
Okay. Please.
let's start with that. I'll just show you that.
Ah.
So, for whom is this written? So definitely Indians, but also, the so I'm going to have one more clarification before I proceed. So some of these, sentences here are in quotes. It's because apart from the book, I read, I don't know, probably half a dozen research papers about this book. Very, very interesting research papers which have analyzed, so many aspects of the book. In fact, if any of you are interested, drop in your email ID. I'll mail it to you. It's quite interesting, most of the research papers which I went through. So some of them though I've given, the sources where I've researched each place, wherever I have taken it, I didn't mention the actual author and the thing. Instead, I just put it in quotes. So the cosmopolitan diasporic writers like Rushdie, Tharoor, and Seth, in the effort to assert the identities in the national space of India, are also engaged in writing back to the empire and imperial constructions of history through their fictions. So definitely there's Tharoor thought of a global audience when writing the book. This is why he also has a glossary at the end, which contains words for meanings, for words such as dharna and kadi, which proclaims, Indianness. So as Shamal Rao ji had just mentioned, Kushwant Singh had said this book would get banned, and there were many other people also who expected the book to get banned, especially for the irreverent way in which he's spoken about many of those whom we hold so sacred. But Penguin had been actually very smart in keeping the print so tiny. This is what India Today says. So he's been very smart in keeping the print so tiny, it needs a magnifying glass. And the book so long that it will keep away all but the ivory tower lot, not generally prone to taking to the streets. So those who read Tharoor might be angry, or even if they are angry with him, they wouldn't be someone who would take this to the streets, uh, and fight for a ban on the book. So this is why I was there. In fact, it is very interesting when you read the negative reviews of Tharoor's book, for the great Indian novel. I was just reading it on Goodreads, I think. So um, one of the reviews says "bekar hai," actually says BHEKR, bekar hai. So so very, very obvious that that person has definitely not read the book at all, and he just has maybe a rough idea on what it is hinting at. And there was another which says this guy has murdered his wife and he's sitting here and writing books. So I think they don't have a clear cut way in which to fight, because most of them have not have not read the book, or they definitely cannot make head or tails of it, which has been a very good thing for Tharoor and for the book. So we all have a chance of reading it because of that, I guess. And okay, to proceed further, um, another very interesting part of the book, which kind of initially disturbed me, but then I'm very sure it might have disturbed some of you too, is the irreverence with which he speaks about important events and very, very important personalities of history, like Gandhiji and Jawaharlal Nehru, and so many others, even Subhash Chandra Bose for that matter. It felt very disturbing the way he had, if you don't see the broader picture and if you take the incident as it is, it gets a kind of disturbing to read about it in that way, because we hold them in such high esteem. So this took me on a little path on why did he do that, and what is his ideas behind it. So, as I said, an irreverent tone is used to narrate incidents and leaders of national significance. Here, Tharoor consciously tries to tell his readers that it is high time that they detach themselves from the nostalgic souvenirs of the past, look at them from a more objective point of view and a contemporary global perspective. So, there's a subversion of both the epic and the recent history of the country. VV says that this is his story. So when he starts the book, the narrator first thing he says is this is his story. So his story itself is history. So history in his version. History itself is a play on the words of his story. So so this is his story that follows. That's what the narrator says. So the necessity to cling on to the state's version of history is rejected outright in the book. Now, to just I would say deviate a bit. So in India, there are numerous instances in which historians and groups of people are labeled as seditionists because they were having micro narratives that do not conform to the nationalist project. So the local history, even when it comes to freedom struggle, we see national leaders, but every state itself is rich in history, is rich in a history, has its own local freedom fighters who fought for the people, who died for the people. But their stories are on the verge of being wiped off, and the nationalist project, when you think of a country as a whole, so the national project here, I mean the project of teaching history to the children, ensures that students are taught the national histories but not the local ones. The great Indian novel deals with this problem in a very clever manner. It does both confirmation and rebellion at the same time, and allows the perplexed reader to ponder over the question of choosing between the dominant national discourses, which is apparent in the novel, through equating the political history with the epic, and the less conspicuous motive, less conspicuous motive of subverting both the epic and political history through irreverent treatment. So what he's tried to do is he's handled the national, history, the state mentioned national history in such an irreverent manner uh, to kind of dilute the amount of importance which we are giving to only the national whole picture. And he wants us to look at what individual states do also. So there's this interesting thing which comes where, the character Krishna, when he says, your national politics is more murky. I'm happy with being as in my local state and taking care of my local state. So for the state to exist and function well, there should definitely be a nation in place, and this is where narratives come into the picture. So some histories are legitimized national histories, while some others are rejected as invalid. The truth is the official version too, whatever the official version of history which is given by the state, that also will crumble down if it is not constantly reinforced through academic spaces and literary and cultural productions like films, novels, etc. So it's also to be noted that opposing views of history can also be legitimized in the similar way if one uses popular media, institutional spaces, and cultural products, strategically. So we see people who don't really, deserve the kind of importance but they kind of get those, but they're kind of getting that importance now. For example, would be Savarkar. And so the novel also moves in a very, vicious cycle, which denotes the fact that history repeats itself. So it ends where it started, and the narrator is convinced that he should retell the entire story. And Tharoor does this to draw attention to the notion that there are very varying and subjective perspectives when it comes to history. So the concept of the nation significantly influences the production and consumption of literary texts, national identity, and cultural production. So if you extend this a little bit, this is applicable to history as well. So the production and consumption of national history within the academic spaces has now become a very contentious issue. So why am I speaking about all this is, just to say that this irreverent note that Tharoor has taken is to only show us that there are no flawless people in history. So whom we are, holding bigger than life, or, whom, people are fighting and killing for and trying to hold the great picture in mind. Not everyone is flawless. They're people, they are human, so they've also made mistakes. So, Tharoor wants to bring in a certain amount of objectivity in the way in which one imagines national identity rather than paving the way for jingoism. Also, the use of paradoxical situations in the great Indian novel mystify the components of myth and history. This the main reason why he's doing this is because in the postmodern era, there is this denial of absolutes. No, there's nothing is ever, completely black, or nothing is completely white. So this obfuscation of the real meaning is due to the postmodern denial of absolutes for an interpretation of a text. Also, another thing has been that the West, how they view our Indian writing in English, has been with a, they always have this feeling. They paint the entire Indian writing in English in the, I would say, with the same brush, probably. So, he wanted to fight against this homogenization of cultural products. The Western literary critics often try to ignore the cultural and political diversity of the post-colonial writings, and they perceive them only as a resistance to the Western cultural hegemony. So, when it comes to Raja Rao or with R.K. Narayan, most of our popular writers, so always the West had this feeling that whenever they write about their Indian history, about the Indian independence movements, it's always tales of sadness, sorrow, and the greatness of Gandhi and Gandhiji, and all these are the kind of narratives which usually come in. So in 1989, when Tharoor came out with the Great Indian Novel, it was definitely, a shockingly different narrative for the West. This is not a kind of writing which they had probably ever seen. The irreverent and style with which he could look at events in the country and, say that despite, with all these flaws, still we are what we are. So these retellings assert the legacy of the post-colonial nation, along with providing contrasting viewpoints as opposed to the dominant perspective. Okay, so let me, stop share before we go to a few interesting quotes. Is there anything you'd like to add, Percy?
Do you know when was this Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children the time? This is 89. So what is his Midnight Children published? It was in 90.
Must be after this, right? I'm not very sure. Let me
After
see.
this or during the same time? Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, he also, his book
Midnight
also,
Children is older.
1981.
It's 1981.
81.
1981.
Okay, 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 okay.
Even before
Okay.
this.
Before this.
his book has come.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to know that.
Fine. I had a small point here.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we have a mythology, Mahabharata, and a political event, both got joined. Are there any similar such experiments or novels in any other language?
Mythology
For instance,
and
juxtaposing
history.
current
This one?
events against
Okay.
mythological characters and combining them both, maybe reverence and irreverence that is taken care of very well in the previous slides. Are there any similar, is it a special or a specific genre as far as our Tharoor is concerned?
With mythology, I'm not sure, but like
Political parody, it is there, I accept. There
political
is no doubt.
parody. Yeah, there are a lot.
That
Gulliver's Travels.
there are several, many are there that we can very well understand. But
Yeah, mythology.
to braid it along with mythology, that is what I was thinking when I completed the book. Are there any such books, any other language like that? That is the doubt I had.
Mm.
Or is it unique? As you said, it is
Yeah.
from India, it is unique. Something unexpected from the Western readers. Like, that is a fact.
Yeah, true.
And this particular question of reverence and irreverence, he was also asked. In Sahitya Academy, he attended a meeting actually. There are
Okay.
two books he has written. First book was this, The Great Indian Novel. Another one actually he has written on Bollywood, 5 stars something, I just forgot the title.
Yes, yes.
There actually, David Badidar, he asked actually.
Mm.
He said, in the first book, as far as your Great Indian Novel is concerned, you are going from reverence to irreverence. And as far as this 5 star that Bollywood is concerned, you are reversing this. What is your thematic contention?
Mm.
From reverence to irreverence and from irreverence to reverence. Two books actually they have compared and asked him. He said, I don't subscribe to either of the ideas, but I want the readers to think. It is a material for them to think, as you just said, what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And don't always idolize them. Be practical, analyze. They are also men of feet of clay, that type of thing. It is for the reader to think and decide. That is what he answered.
Correct. It's very true also. Initially, but did any of you find it disturbing, especially like, when I was thinking, oh, he's written this and the West will be actually reading this, so they must have read all these things, accounts of Gandhiji, and people, what
You
did they
can
think?
connect the
Because
book to present days.
correct. But
And it will
if
be
you
really
see,
risky.
yeah, now, but if you see Shamal Raoji, maybe for us still we can see the bigger picture of Mahabharata and we can know, okay, this is why he's written this in
Yes,
this
yes.
way. But they don't know, right? Most of them don't know what's Mahabharata.
Nothing.
So,
They
yeah,
even if they try to know, also it is a difficult thing for them because not only they have to understand the language, the story, the milu, the customs, the
correct.
culture. So many things are involved. It's just not a simple linear story. A non-linear story within story within story. It's a very complicated thing.
Correct.
Rather, Ramayana is straight cut. Okay, but in Mahabharata it has got everything. There is a quote somewhere, ma'am. Actually, what is here is nowhere else.
Correct.
What is not here is nowhere. Here, in that he has said actually, Mahabharata is such a huge book. It has got everything for that matter. There is cheating, there is unionism, there is pageantry, everything it is there. Polyandry, so many things are there in it. And for a Westerner to understand it in the right spirit, with all its delicate nuances, I'm sure it is difficult.
Difficult. I don't even think many of them would have, understood it in that spirit at all. So I'm
And
not
one more
sure
thing,
what did
let
they
me
take away
submit.
from it.
If you read Mahabharata, somehow or other, I have a weakness for Karna. He is my hero for all that matter. And Kanna being treated as a Muslim, it was not just acceptable. Actually. And he is what I call eldest of all Pandavas.
Yeah. And as
So
Jinnah of all the people.
I call Jinnah. And one more thing. Okay, forget about mythology. For example, within few months, some 12, 13 months, Jinnah died after independence. I don't remember the dates actually.
Correct.
Like an if scenario. Instead of Nehru, had Jinnah been given the control of the country, how things would have been? All these hypothetical questions also give rise to.
Yeah, true. I also had a few, quotes of Shashi Tharoor from his interviews. So I
Acha,
think I'll
please.
share the screen and I'll share those
Okay.
with you. So this was when, Shashi Tharoor was asked in an interview on, on his being an Anglophile with impeccable English and mannerisms, but still having, vehement antagonism towards the British rule in India. So he says, very beautifully. He says, very simply, the capacity to speak in the English language does not preclude criticism of the colonial English state and the British Empire. The reformers of the Bengal Renaissance in the early 19th century read, wrote, and spoke fluent English, but their soul was Indian. Our freedom fighters absorbed English and challenged colonialism in the very language of that regime. Then there were those who stood up to power within the British system. Dadabhai Naoroji is an excellent example of that. The man who was ostensibly an Anglophile went on to produce one of the most devastating critics of the British impoverishment of India.
Yes, yes.
So, circumstances and history have created in India one of the world's largest English speaking populations, but that or our style of speaking English doesn't make any of us less Indian. The experience of the British Raj was a horrific one. It created landlessness, poverty, drained our resources, enriched foreign lands, and deindustrialized us. It deserves criticism, and as I have said, we must forgive but never forget this past. Hence the book, and hence my vocal efforts to remind Indians today of what our ancestors went through. The language and accent in which I do so is less important than this message.
Yes.
So this was an interview which he had given after An Era of Darkness, the book An Era of Darkness, the British Empire in India. Yeah, so along with this, I had to mention one more thing was there is this excellent speech, which he gives at Oxford. That was during a debate a debate on whether British owes reparation to the colonies which it left behind, and it's taking place in Oxford. It's such an excellent speech. In fact, just before this, I had watched it again. And I think you should definitely watch it. I'll ask Saret maybe to leave the link to it on the chat. Do watch the speech where he clearly, with numbers, puts his case across with such humor also, and of the amount and the extent of plundering which has been done by the Britishers in our country. Also, there's another very interesting things, but I couldn't find that quote. So I was searching for that quote again today, and I couldn't find it. Where he says, you might remember when I say that, when I talk about the quote, you might probably remember it. There's a place where he says that poverty has been something which has been introduced by the British in India. So India was never poor. So if India was a poor country, if India was, didn't have money, didn't have riches, they would have never been, colonized by the British. Why would Britain want to come and take over a country which was poor and poverty and suffering? So definitely we have been a very rich and established civilization when they actually came and took us over. So I love
I
how he has
also,
brought it up.
I also had the speech reparations.
Yeah, you heard the
The
speech.
brilliant, yes, 2 days back I had. It is also there. I
Uh,
had noted to play. Anyway, you said
It's
it is a
got some
15
10
minute
million
speech.
views.
It is 15-minute speech. He 7 years
Yes,
back he gave it actually in
correct.
Oxford University in Orbit.
Yes,
First
yes,
class actually. The way he presented with complete data. It was 27% when they left. It is 4% like that.
yes,
Complete
yes,
figure, small slips he was holding in his hand, and
yes,
almost it was an extempore and a passionate speech. I liked that.
yes. Wonderful. And in fact, they say that, oh, we are paying to India. And he says what you're paying to India is 0.4%. It's lesser
Exactly.
than
He
what
came with
it's lesser than what we spend on fertilizer.
fertilizers. No,
Yeah,
no.
correct. So it was really amazing speech, and Sarath has left the link on chat. So if
Yes, yes,
any
yes.
of you have
Given the
not
link.
watched it, please do check it out. And on the same note, I think I should add that sadly, we had a prime minister who went to Oxford
Sure.
and who said, that he was presented with a doctorate or something in law at that time at Oxford, and he said in the British rule was a benign rule, and the British, in fact, you know, what was the exact word? The British had done a lot of good. There was very good governance
Ah,
during their,
yes,
ruling
yes.
in India.
I
Do
also
you,
recollect.
yes,
There
do
have
you
been
remember
no,
who was? I didn't want to say the name.
there have been no railway network had they not come like that. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
That is
So
one
it
of
was
his.
Manmohan Singh.
Acha.
Yeah, it
Don't
was
know what
Manmohan.
was his compulsion to say that.
Yes. So a person from the same party.
Uh,
Yeah, Manmohan Singh, and it was it's just self-serving because he's being presented with a doctorate. Probably he
could
felt
be,
he had to
could
say
be.
that.
He must have got carried away and said it.
He's the first and probably the only prime minister to make such a statement in Britain.
Hmm. Sorry.
Okay. So to proceed, so there's also another interesting, answer which he had given when he was asked about what does he think about patriotism and nationalism. So he says, in an increasingly connected world where nations are interdependent and there can be no closing of doors, nationalism of the aggressive variety can cause great harm. Nationalism is also, as we see currently in India, susceptible to political misinterpretation and indeed even perversion, delivering gains to certain leaders while opening the door to worrying long term problems. Patriotism, on the other hand, comes from within, a love for the land of one's birth, the culture that nourishes and makes us who we are. This is a deeper feeling that is, in a way, purer and less contaminated by political ambition. Patriotism is affection for one's land. Nationalism creates an us and them, which in an interconnected world is a dangerous thing. History is full of lessons about the damage hyper-nationalism can cause by casting things in black and white and appealing to baser instincts. Maturity would be to celebrate patriotism instead of raising nationalism and anti nationalism. The former is a natural feeling we evoke as a people, the latter is increasingly being used as a political tool. So there's also this, another opinion where, some people say that India wouldn't have been India had it not been for the British. There wouldn't have been any political unity. There wouldn't have been one country if it was not for the British. So for this also, he has this beautiful quote where he says, Indian history is full of an impulse for political unity, and it is naive to imagine that it wouldn't have happened without the British. In fact, when the British started making inroads into India, the Maratha Confederacy in central and northern India exercised de facto control over large swaths of territory. The Mughal emperor was maintained by the Marathas as figurehead, and one can well imagine the evolution gradually of a constitutional monarchy on a larger scale. The British never freely gave democracy to India, and whatever they conceded was given most reluctantly, and it was prized from their grasp. Tipu Sultan bought in technology from Enlightenment era France, and there is no reason to believe that we would not have, of our own choice, come into modernity without the British. It was the British who told us that without them, we would never have evolved out of prehistoric darkness. This plainly is a staggering untruth. India, led by Indians, would have charted its own course and found its destiny. So, he speaks a lot more about this in the speech also, which I would urge you to watch. For instance, he's when asked about when the opposition groups, so there are two groups. So his side of the speech we see over here, but he mentions about what the others spoke also. So when someone says, British brought roads and railways, so he says roads where we didn't need to be colonized to have roads. So many countries had roads without becoming colonies too. And also, when speaking about railways, he says that we spent money for them to make the railways, and we spent probably twice of what it would have cost had they made those, had those railways been made in Canada or somewhere else. So they take money from us to make railways for their purpose, right? So we've actually paid them double for it. So anyone, telling that they gave us roads or railways or things would be absolute crazy thing. He also talks about them mentioning that, oh, we brought democracy to India. So how did they bring democracy to India? By ruling India for 200 years, impoverishing her, killing so many people, terrorizing them. And after all this, they say they gave democracy. So it's absolute rubbish. It's a very good speech. Do watch it. Okay, so also they ask him, when you're choosing the mythology, what made you choose Mahabharata? Why did you choose Mahabharata as the basis for the great India novel? And he says, the Mahabharata struck me as a work of such contemporary resonance. It helped crystallize my own inchoate ideas about issues. I wanted a vehicle to transmit some of my political and historical interests in the evolution of modern India. I saw the recasting of the Mahabharata as a perfect vehicle for the two Indias. These are some quotes from the great Indian novel from the book. You think I'm simply exaggerating, don't you, Ganapati? The hyperbole of the old, the heroism of the nostalgic. That's what you think it is. You can't know, you with your ration cards and your black markets and the cynical materialism of your generation, what it was like in those days, what it felt like to discover a cause, to belong to a crusade, to believe. So this is what he speaks to the court. As a law-abiding citizen, my first instinct upon receiving an instruction from the authorities to cease my activities would normally have been to obey. However, this instinct clashed with a higher instinct to respect my obligation to the people of Motihari, whom I am here to serve. Between obedience to the law and obedience to my conscience, I can only choose the latter. I am perfectly prepared, however, to face the consequences of my choice and to submit without protest to any punishment you may impose. India is not an underdeveloped country, but a highly developed one in an advanced state of decay. And this is when he describes India before the British rule. So there were no droughts, Ganapati, no floods either. The rains came at just the right times when the farmers had sowed their seeds and said their prayers, and never for longer than they were welcome. Fruit ripened in the sunshine, flowers blossomed in the gentle breeze, the birds chirped gaily as they built their nest in the shade and aimed their droppings only at passing English women. The very cows produced a milk no doodwala could bear to water. Okay, some mistake in the typing of it. Yeah. Okay, this was also another very interesting quote. So where the Mr. Nichols, after he has drawn the borders, he's congratulated. So congratulations, Mr. Nichols, you have just succeeded in putting your international border through the middle of the market, giving the rice fields to Karnistan and the warehouse to India, the largest pig farm in the Zilla to the Islamic State, and the madrasa of the Holy Prophet to the country the Muslims are leaving. Oh, and if I understand that squiggle there correctly, he added, taking a pointer from the open-mouthed expert, the schoolmaster will require a passport to go to the loo between classes. Well done, Mr. Nichols. I hope the rest of your work proves as easy. When this was about Gandhi. So while he was alive, he was impossible to ignore. Once he had gone, he was impossible to imitate. Great discoveries, Ganapati, are often the result of making the wrong mistake at the right time. Simple logic of colonialism, under which the rules of humanity applied only to the rulers, for the rulers were people, and the people were objects. Objects to be controlled, disciplined, kept in their place, and taught lessons like so many animals. A philosopher is a lover of wisdom, Ganapati, not of knowledge, which for all its great uses ultimately suffers from the crippling defect of ephemerality. All knowledge is transient, linked to the world around it, and subject to change as the world changes. Whereas wisdom, true wisdom, is eternal, immutable. To be philosophical, one must love wisdom for its own sake, accept its permanent validity, and yet its perpetual irrelevance. It is the fate of the wise to understand the process of history, yet never to shape it. this is another place towards the end where he says, not my India, where epic battles are fought for great causes, where freedom and democracy are argued over, won, betrayed, and lost, but an India where mediocrity reigns, where the greatest cause is the making of money, where dishonesty is the most prevalent art and bribery is the most vital skill, where power is an end in itself rather than a means, where the real political issues of the day involve not principles, but parochialism. Our fatalism goes beyond, even if it springs from, the Hindu acceptance of the world as it is ordained to be. If you believed in truth and cared enough to obtain it, Ganga affirmed, you had to be prepared actively to suffer for it. It was essential to accept punishment willingly in order to demonstrate the strength of one's convictions. And these were some of the papers which I had read. And as I had mentioned, if you are interested, you can just send me your email. I'll, mail you a copy of them. Yes, I think I took a lot of your time with the quotes. Sorry.
It is welcome. It is welcome. But all said and done, madam, don't you think actually it begins with sadness and ends with sadness?
It does, as our history does, I guess.
Even the last few pages, actually, he gave his best last chapter, The Path to Salvation. I read it 2 times. It was really good. I could see even in my sleep that the process could not be overcome. It could only be escaped from.
Correct.
The process could not be overcome. It could only be escaped from. In the distant hills overlooking Hastinapur loomed the snow-covered top of a gleaming mountain, and from it a celestial peace on their visages. Gangaji, Dhritarashtra and Pandu smiled and beckoned. That means all will go to that Himalayas. They give up the process, actually, they bypass it. And even after that, so many years, we are still in the same position, which you spoke of bribery, all those things, adulterated food, this, that, and other things. No, we have not changed materially much.
Yeah. Not changed at all, I feel. Nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. We may hold our Vedic religion, all those spiritualism and all those things in a lofty levels. But practically, what is their impact in our life?
Correct. So even this idolization, which he was just talking about, I don't know how many of you know about this. So day before yesterday, there were 2 movies which released in Tamil. And one of them was a movie of Vijay, and the other one is a movie of Ajit. Both of whom are considered as, 2 big icons, probably like what Rajinikanth and Kamal Hassan were there.
Kamal Hassan in their period.
Heydays. So, and always there used to be this quarrel among Rajinikanth's fans and Kamal Hassan's fans, So the same thing which happened, I think this happened about day before yesterday, if I'm right. The movie released, both of them had a movie release on the very same day. And the first show was at 1 o'clock in the night. And so both the fans of Ajit and fans of Vijay both met. And it was a huge hangama in one of the theaters where the theater doors were smashed, posters of Ajit's fan store, Vijay's fan store being, police had to be called. There are full interesting footages online, if you can see. They are beating up the police are beating them up, and it's mad chaos. And I'm very sure Ajit and Vijay are very good friends. They must be somewhere abroad sipping a nice wine and enjoying the show from there. And it's absolute craziness what they are doing. And I thought my state, Tamil Nadu, is one of those educated ones where a lot of
definitely
level is high. People are more civilized, or I think I guessed wrong. We've not changed at all.
One more sentence, let me read out, madam. I have portrayed a nation in struggle. I have portrayed a nation in struggle, but omitted its struggles against itself, ignoring the regionalists and autonomists and separatists and secessionists who even today are trying to tear the country apart. It is very relevant, actually, the days we are in, the country that is passing through.
Correct.
That means there is not much of a change. Even
Correct.
after so many years of freedom, and they fought so much, they brought it and we have messed it up.
Hmm.
It somehow I felt it ended on a dismal note.
Hmm.
I felt it that way personally. He didn't come up with any solution. He left it there. And
Hmm.
somewhere someone asked him, "Are you going to go put in another sequel for it?" Because the story stopped with emergency and it
Correct.
post. He said nothing doing. No question of sequel. I'm not going to write further.
Hmm.
If someone wants to write, let them write. But I'm not going to write any sequel to this great Indian novel he wrote.
Correct.
That is the thing.
Yeah.
It makes you think. It makes you conscious of your position. As you just said, actually, it's a madness. What is this? Like the two fellows, one movie, and it's
Yeah. What is the big
wastage
deal?
of
Watch a
national
movie at
property.
1 o'clock, watch another at 4 o'clock. It's okay. You know,
It's all, yeah, we are driven into absurd things, absurdity. If you think of that
absurdity.
Kafka and stuff, you see, it's all absurd actually. If you
Yeah.
read that Kafka book, that sceneries like that, it makes no sense at all.
Correct.
Actually,
Anyways,
history
yes, ma'am.
kind of repeats itself. You see, so we
Pardon
are
me?
always, I said history kind of repeats itself. Maybe the
Yes.
form change, but it is the same thing. The way we read in that 100 Years of Solitude,
Correct.
Exactly.
Marquez book,
Hmm.
it is just the same thing. I mean, in that book also, we are at the same place where we started. No,
That is the
it is.
thing. And particularly, I wanted to say the sentence with which the book begins, and with the same sentence, this book also ends. Have you observed, ma'am?
Hmm.
Yeah, I'll read out that actually.
Yes.
Opening sentence, he says, they tell me India is an underdeveloped country. That is after the first sentence.
Hmm.
And if you read actually the last paragraph, last sentence, it says, they tell me India is an underdeveloped country. So
Hmm.
beautifully beginning and ending sentences are same. As you just
Correct.
said, we are where we were, or we will continue to remain where we were all along. No
Correct.
change practically. We only pretend some changes are happening, but no, it's not like that. And recently, Shirley Jackson book also like that. Beginning sentence, ending sentence, same.
Correct. Right. Right.
Yeah, that is something typical I found.
Hmm.
And these two sentences, when beginning ending, they are trying to communicate, say something to us. That means there is no change, friends. You are as you are like that. And after having read 600 pages, that is a thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Percy, I think I had read your review where you were not, you didn't like the second half of the book or something like that, right?
It's been a while, but I think the second half dragged a bit compared to the first half,
Mm,
pacing wise.
okay.
I feel that may also be reflective of the fact that, we
Mm,
don't study that part of our own history that much, right? Typically, when you
true.
talk about studying history,
Yeah.
we end with independence. And if you
The
look at
end
the
with
book, the
independence.
way it is structured,
Correct.
that second half deals with events
Mm,
about which maybe I didn't have sufficient background to
true, true. No,
appreciate.
very true. I don't remember reading, learning about the emergency and all when I was in school in our history
Yeah,
textbook. I
generally,
don't
I
think
think
it
it's
was
not
there.
taught, maybe because it is assumed that that is something that people have lived through. So maybe
Correct.
nowadays, I don't know what the kids will be taught by the time, by the
Yeah.
time our kids are learning history.
Yeah, maybe it would be there. Tulika, did their kids learn about emergency and all in
No,
history?
no, no, no.
No.
No mention.
In Indian
Hardly a
kids,
mention.
hardly a mention.
No.
Okay. What they had Indian history, right? But till the independence
They
movement and
had
all.
Indian history. They had Indian history, but again, at the higher levels, like my daughter is doing it in grade 11, it's just world history. They're not
Mm,
doing Indian history.
correct. Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
In
It always
ICSE?
ends at, yeah, ICSE. ICSE.
Yeah.
I'm at the ISP now, right? In
Okay.
grade 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have world history.
Mm. Very interestingly, in fact, when I was, mentioning about the contentious issue of history textbooks in India, so I didn't use some of the terminology which was used in that paper. So he calls itself as the nation-sponsored, you know, NCRT history. He calls history itself as that nation-sponsored NCRT history. Depending on whoever is in power at that particular moment. NCRT textbooks seem to be the one which are like constantly changing in India.
Even the history that we study in the north is different from what my friends here in Maharashtra have studied. That was like, of course, I'm not a CBSE student. I'm an ICSE student. She was a state board student in Maharashtra. So in Maharashtra board, they learn in greater detail about Tilak and all, who we haven't read in that detail.
Correct.
So that's like even in different parts of the country, different leaders are, of course, the national leaders are there, but even among the national leaders, there's a hierarchy in different states.
Correct. True. But we in Tamil Nadu, we did learn about, the freedom fighters from Tamil Nadu, but we learned it in Tamil as a part of our Tamil textbook, not as a part of the history textbook.
Oh,
but that may be because I was studied in CBSE, so that could be a reason.
Right. No. If you read in state board, no, then naturally that would have state history, like local history, more detail. Yeah.
Like in Maharashtra, like I was ICSE myself, but my cousins were in state board. So as she said, there's a lot more emphasis on Maharashtrian freedom fighters, and of course there is a lot of emphasis on Shivaji, which I'm sure would not be there in other states. Like in other states, it would be a part of the Mughal era, whereas here in the state books, it was I think almost the entire year was mostly about Shivaji and the the subsequent Marathas.
Okay.
And in fact, I think in some states, Maratha Shivaji is not glorified to that extent in my school books, to be very honest. I mean, it was like Shivaji is shown in a different light altogether. That is what it is. That is, I mean, the loot and all, Maratha loot and all, that is,
Suchi, this is in which state? Not Maharashtra.
I'm from Odisha.
Okay.
Odisha. Not Maharashtra. I'm Odisha.
In Pune, that sounds like blasphemy,
Yeah,
I know. That's why
I can understand. Even in Bombay, for that matter.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been but very, like, as Shamal Ravji said, it's been very, very enlightening to read the book and to compare it with our history, and as always, to see how hardly things have changed. We're coming back to the same thing, and we are going around in circles probably. Just that every round seems to be getting more dangerous than before. That's all.
Isn't it a surprise that the book has lasted so long?
Yes.
As in, it's not that it's a bad book, but it's such a niche book.
It's such a niche book. In fact,
it has
I
a
don't
narrow...
know. Yeah. How many Westerners would probably understand any of these things? I don't know. But they have given such raving reviews and mentioned so positively and so highly of the book. It's a surprise. What did they really understand? What did they take away? I wonder.
Yeah, and among the Indians also, how many people will actually read it?
Correct.
It's not not a difficult read, but it's definitely very lengthy.
Very lengthy. Very lengthy.
It probably have that kind of. Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm saying it probably helps that it was the book club read for me to for probably all of us to finish it.
I'd only read it long back, so
yeah,
I'm like just amazed that it has survived this long.
It was a tough read, but for me, the book, after when I read, it didn't feel tough, and in fact, I felt it moved very smoothly. I was a little scared that it was Tharoor's book, so would it be very difficult to read, but it didn't feel like that. It felt a very comfortable read. But after that, I took upon this task of reading all the research papers about the book. And that was a
Yeah.
slog. That was horrible.
But that is a fact. And let us remember, he wrote it when he was 33 years of age.
Oh,
Very young.
wow. Oh, my God.
That is the thing. 33 years of age, he wrote such, and Silver Jubilee edition has also come.
Yeah.
No.
So I think I was luckier than you guys that I read it on my Kindle, so I had no idea how big it actually was. Maybe if
No,
I'd
sir.
seen its
Actually,
size
it
in
is
print,
6.
if I'd seen its size in print, I may not have tried.
Yeah,
It's a huge,
exactly.
600 pages, sir.
Correct, correct.
That's the thing.
Ramanathan,
I just kept reading,
are
and
you?
as Archana said, its pacing is very fast, so that is not an issue.
Ah,
Yeah.
Once you start reading, you get through it.
and that is a fact.
Yeah.
Are you
And
guys
the next book we
ready
are
for
choosing.
roots now? 900 pages.
What, Tulika? I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
Yeah. I said
Oh.
900 pages.
Which one?
It's also a big book. I know idea.
Yeah.
I just started. I never said.
Okay.
Roots.
That's
The
also
Roots,
yeah.
Alex Haley.
Roots is huge. Roots is also huge. It's bigger than this one, I think.
Oh,
But it's something I've been
that's
wanting to read
okay.
for
We are
really been wanting to read for a long time. So
okay.
happy.
It's okay. We all are happy.
I gave it the last week of February, the last Friday of February. So we have ample time.
Hmm.
Yeah, a month and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me stop recording.